Hello, everybody. This is another West Michigan Jazz Society Jazz Talk. I'm so glad that all of you decided to join us tonight. We have a very special guest this evening. His name is Rufus Ferguson. Rufus will be our special guest at the first ever, and for what I'm believing, hopefully only ever, virtual WMJS holiday party. And tonight we're going to take an opportunity to get to know Rufus, get to know his music, and just generally have a good time here. So without further ado, welcome Rufus.
Hello, everyone out there in virtual online land. I don't know what that means nowadays, but
I don't know what it means either, but it is what it is, I guess.
yeah.
So the first thing I want to say is just a little commercial. First of all, Jazz Talks are provided free of charge by the West Michigan Jazz Society. And if you can, please donate to help support our mission, because we are bringing more great content like this with fantastic musicians just like Rufus here.
No.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, Rufus. How did you get into playing the piano? And what was your, let's take it from the top a little bit here.
Oh man, how much time do we have?
You got as much time as you want.
All right, I only need 2 minutes. It's cool. So I started studying piano when I was 5. Started classical, obviously, kind of the way that a lot of musicians start. Not all, but some. And then I kind of got into jazz when I was 13, and I kind of did both. And then I kind of went all in with jazz about 20, I would say. I had toyed with it before, but I kind of went all in at the age of 20, and I've been doing jazz ever since. It's been about 10 years now. So, but obviously, most people can tell by my playing, as much as I like to hide it, I come out of the church, out of the gospel church. And so even today, like you'll Friday, you'll hear me play, with my trio. And Sunday, if you just go a little bit, I think let's see, if you go a little bit east from Granville up to Lighthouse Full Center Church in Grand Rapids, playing the Hammond B3 on Sunday. So I'm still very much in tune with my gospel roots. It's part of who I am. But I'm also a jazz pianist. So that's kind of who I am in a 1 minute, 2 minute, synopsis.
That's a good synopsis, better than most synopses that I've read. So let's unpack some of this, because I'm really curious about it. So what made you want to go all in, as you say, to studying jazz? What was it about the music? Because I know a lot of people who go all in on classical music, and a lot of people who go all in on the gospel tradition. So what made you want to go all in on jazz?
And let me back up. I'm not sure if I ever went all in. I guess I voided that statement when I said I still play golf every Sunday and every Thursday and every Tuesday. So I guess I'm not all in. It's not all I do. It's a big part of my identity. But again, the gospel is a big part of my identity, and I somehow figure out how to be both people in 1 week, multiple times. But in getting into jazz was almost a natural thing. I mean, the music. I grew up in Flint, in the Detroit area, so I come from the East Side. So the jazz tradition in Detroit obviously is very, very heavy. So that's where I come from. I come from that tradition, and so it was always in me. I was always around the music. I was always experiencing the culture, the society, the history, all of those things. I was always engulfed in. So it was just a natural thing for me to do. And I think the classical thing in my sense, and a lot of people who come out of the traditional upbringing of jazz, like in the cities like Detroit and New York, was to be a more well-rounded musician, to learn the technical side of things, to be able to play with the right fingering and with, understanding harmony from a classical perspective. So I can do other things even then and now. But I didn't necessarily go all in. I was always going to be a jazz pianist. I truly believe that, because it was just part of who I was, and I came out of that culture, and that culture came out of me.
Yeah, so you grew up on the East Side, which I spent some time over there when I was in Ann Arbor, and I love that side of this. That side of the state has a very special place in my heart.
Yes.
Um, and so I'm wondering, like, who did you listen to growing up? You said it was always part of you. You were always around the music. Who were you listening to? Who were you checking out?
So growing up, I remember listening to people like Dwight Adams and Bob Hurst was around and Rodney Whitaker and Roger Jones. I mean, these are like the Marcus Belgrave. I mean, I
Oh
remember like
yes.
listening to these guys play. Um, and then so I started studying with some of them. I was like, hey,
Hmm.
Roger, I want to learn jazz. Um, but that's I mean that's kind of I grew up with the OGs. I remember Ali
Yeah.
Jackson being around
Oh
where he
yeah.
kind of did his
Yes.
thing. So like
Hmm.
there's just so much history on that side. I guess I can't name them all. I could be here all day, but those are kind of the staples of the guys I was listening to, really.
Absolutely. So you said that you play your gospel, background is very much a part of you. Um, for those of our listeners who might not be so familiar with like the connections between jazz and the Black church, can you kind of enlighten us and can you like bless us with kind of a the way that you see those traditions connecting and really being not synonymous with one another, but definitely very close cousins there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's obviously the musical aspect that connects things. Oh, it's so cool. I was looking at the comments and people right while I didn't notice that. That's nice. Um, there's obviously the musical connection, but I think the bigger connection between gospel and jazz is the emotional connection. And I'm not saying that other music doesn't have that emotional connection, but a lot of the emotion, a lot of the um, heart that comes from that music and goes into playing that music comes from history. It comes from uh, a groundwork that includes black um, events, I'll say it that way. And a lot of these events include things like slavery and field, where out of slavery, obviously, there's field songs and hymns. And a lot of these things are
Hmm.
the groundwork musically for jazz. I mean, a lot of these guys in the old church, they didn't read music. They were just improvising. And I mean, we talk about like stride pianists. Oh, the great stride pianist. There's Pat Waller, and there's Teddy Wilson, and Oscar Peterson can do it, and Art Tatum. It's like, yeah. Before that, you go to a black church on a Sunday morning, and that piano player is striding up a storm.
Oh, that's
So a
right.
lot of those things, and even now, you go to some of those old traditional churches, and you'll hear those piano players, and they can stride. I mean, that stuff comes from the church.
Oh yeah,
You know.
yeah, without a doubt. We got a couple people commenting here about the holiday party. We got Jake up in here, and he says, "So excited for Friday." I think that's supposed to be an exclamation point. He said, "Any sneak peeks on the set list?" This guy wants spoilers. All right.
You want spoilers already, man? Uh,
He's
well,
just
since it's a
excited.
holiday, obviously, this is a holiday concert. We're going to at least do one holiday song. Um,
All right.
I can give you that, but actually, I'll give you a little more. I'll bite on this one. Uh, so obviously, again, my tradition comes up, or my musical style in jazz comes from the
Hmm.
tradition. A lot of it. Now, granted, when I moved to the West Side, I really got engulfed into the modern jazz sound, and I started doing stuff in Chicago a lot. So a lot of the stuff I do now is very, very modern. There's not much tradition, and it's not that it's bad or better, but there's not a lot of tradition in the music that I fortunately get to play now. But I come from that tradition. And so one of my favorite all time uh, groups is the Oscar Peterson Trio. And so I said, hey, for this, let me put together something that resembles the Oscar Peterson Trio. Um, and so a lot of what you will hear, I won't say any songs except for there's one Christmas song, But we will do all standards, which again is something I don't get to do often. I'm always playing original music, mine or someone else's, or maybe some of the new standards, by like Kenny Kirkland stuff and
Sure.
Herbie and Chick. But we're gonna play some old standards. We
All
may even
right.
call Autumn Leaves. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows what we'll do? But we'll be playing in the Oscar Peterson tradition on Friday.
Wow, that's great. Hey, so anybody out there who's a fan of the Oscar Peterson trio as much as me, first of all, I will fight you to prove to you that you are not. No, I'm just kidding. But at any rate, you guys are all in for a treat on Friday. That's going to be really incredible. We got Nadia and Shaitan up in here, and they're saying it's rooted in cultural experience. I believe that's the stride piano, the gospel kind of element, that connection. If you haven't heard of Nadia and Shaitan, they are the owners of GR Noir, Grand Rapids' newest only jazz club, only wine bar. You got Shaitan and Nadia. They're really, really incredible people, and so we can't wait to support what they're doing. And I'm so excited about their business that I always have to give them a little plug if they're going to come hang with us. Anyway, so
I'm excited. I'm excited for that place. Actually, I'm really excited to see something like that pop up. And
it's a long time coming, isn't it?
oh yeah, definitely, and not just in Grand Rapids, in West Michigan. It's long.
Absolutely.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that, and hopefully there's a connection. I won't give away too much, but there is a connection between us and them, and I'm hoping to see them really soon, and I'm hoping they'll be able to see me real soon. But I'll leave it at that.
All right, all right. That sounds great. Now, so you mentioned the Oscar Peterson trio. Let's talk about the Oscar Peterson trio for a second here. Let's kind of like pump the brakes a little bit because I love those old records. And I have
Oh yeah.
worn out my fair share of them. Can you tell us about some of your favorite cuts, some of your favorite records? I know it's hard to like have favorite records because it's like having like, I don't know, favorite friends. I love all my friends. I want all my friends to, come hang. So what are some of your favorite Oscar Peterson trio records? Where's the vibe at?
Oh man. So I think I would say that some of my favorite. Oh man. I mean, there's so many. I mean, okay. I guess let me try to narrow it down. We Get Requests, I would say, is probably one of my favorite Oscar Peterson trio records, mainly because I think it was the first one I was introduced to, and maybe the first jazz album I was introduced to, actually. Um, so yeah, We Get Requests. I don't know. There's something about that album. I don't know. It speaks to my soul. I don't know what it is about that album. I'm not even sure it's the greatest album ever made, but it's just something about that one that just makes me feel like I don't know. I can't explain it. There's something spiritual about that album that connects with me. And now that I'm talking about it, I'm going to make sure I channel that spirituality on Friday so I can really kind of pull out some of that OP stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The OGOP. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The first record, and this is not about me, but I just have to. You
Oh
mentioned
no,
it.
please. Let's talk.
You mentioned it, and now I'm excited. So the first Oscar Peterson record that I ever heard was Lester Young with the Oscar Peterson Trio.
Oh.
Now I know it's so like predictable that a saxophone player would have heard as the first introduction to Oscar Peterson, Lester Young with the Oscar Peterson Trio, but like the vibe on that record made me say, who is this pianist? Oscar Peterson? Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And I did like a deep dive of Oscar Peterson. I went to my local library and I checked out like all the Oscar Peterson records because I was just I just want to hear everything that this guy does within the realm of possibility, right? So, I think Oscar has this way of playing, where to me, when I listen to his record, I get in this zone, this mental space where it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
The gravity of it pulls me in,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
the only thing that matters that's
Oh
going on.
totally.
And so like, and to the point where I can be, hanging out, just doing anything. Oscar Peterson record comes on. I'm like, all right, let's get in the zone. Like,
There's something about Oscar Peterson that's interesting to me. I mean, obviously there's the classic trio, where Ed Fink finished playing drums. So when I first heard the Oscar Peterson trio, I'm listening to him on drums, and I mean that quarter note on that ride is just like, dude, you are swinging. I'm like, well, that's why it feels so good, right? And then I'm like, wait a minute, he did a record with Joe Pass. Let me check this out. There's no drums, and I'm like, but it's still swinging. I was like, okay, so clearly it's not just the drums doing this. Like that was the moment I realized, like, okay, pianist, you have to be a drummer. Like you have to swing just as hard as they do. And so I think that's really why I like Oscar. I mean, his sense of time, his swing, his connection to rhythm is just it's
yeah,
infectious.
it's like that James Brown, Chadwick Boseman,
Oh yeah,
James Brown. What are you playing? Saxophone? No, that's a drum. What are you playing? That's a drum.
right.
Just this and you know what? I really believe that is what he's playing.
Yeah,
He's playing
you do.
he's playing a drum, and that's what makes it so swinging. I think honestly, I mean, I'm about to go and recommend like one of my students, like just transcribe the Oscar Peterson, like just transcribe all that stuff, because that's how you're gonna get like to that next level. But that's
Yeah,
that's
that
next level swing.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, but not harmonically, rhythmically. I mean, if you really want to understand the music in its true form, you listen to Oscar Peterson.
And
I
man,
think that's always a great start.
yeah, and man, like he can play the phone book,
Man,
like he could play the phone book and sound good. You know what I mean? Like he could play the phone book and swing.
right.
Um, so okay, so this is cool. So you spent some time at Western Michigan University. Tell me about like your experience there, and with I've known Keith Hall for a while. Keith is a great dude.
Yeah.
Tell me kind of about like when, because that was right around the time that you had supposedly said you were really starting to dive more into jazz, and I'm wondering kind of what effect that environment had on your kind of your commitment to the music.
Um. Honestly, and I tell a lot of people this, and the professors know this, so this isn't dig at them or the school at all. But when I went to Western, I didn't go to learn the traditional language. I didn't go to learn the swing. I didn't learn to play jazz. I went to expand my harmonic palette, because anybody who knew me even before I went to Western, oh yeah, he can swing. That's not a problem. He can play bebop. That's cool. But when I went to Western, I said, I need to understand more about this modern thing. And at that point, I didn't know what modern jazz. I had some experience, but I would swing all day. I mean, if you go to Detroit, you know, you'll probably hear a lot more swing than you will hear something in odd meters with, non-functional harmony.
Oh,
So that's
definitely.
so
Yeah.
that's all I knew. And so I met Jeremy Siska, and most people around here probably know him. But he is one of the world's greatest jazz pianists. And he's young. He's young. He's not even, he may be like 33, maybe 32,
Yeah, yeah.
33. But he is just amazing. And I heard him and I was like, okay, I need to study that. And then when I got around him, I ended up learning about Andrew Rathbun and Scott Cowan. And I was like, man, okay. Yeah, these guys have language. That's what I want. That's what I would need. That's what I need. And so when I went there, that they really pushed me. But one thing I liked about them is they pushed me, not like a freshman or not like a newbie to jazz. they knew exactly how to push me that supported my history, my tradition with the music, while allowing me to build on that. And that's kind of what I really appreciate about that faculty. They recognized what I had and really pushed me to do more and to be greater. And I think that's one of the greatest things about Westerners. They really know how to tailor a program just for you. At least that's my experience.
That's hip. That's hip. Right on.
Yeah.
So tell me now about your music, because obviously, if you're talking about expanding harmonic, possibilities, you said you're playing a lot of original music. Your original, work as a composer. So is that mostly coming out of the tradition also, or are you working to expand harmonic palettes, or what? Where's that coming from?
Um, the majority of my music does not come out of the traditional language at all, actually. And it's not that I can't write in the traditional language. I've wrote a few tunes that are swingy, if you call it. But um, there's just a deeper connection that I have that allows me to really express everything I'm thinking. Sometimes I feel the tradition allows me to, when I'm playing in the traditional format, a lot of times it allows me to have fun and express something, one thing, two things. I think, but writing in the modern tradition, it allows me to just everything I'm thinking, everything I'm feeling, I can put it on paper. And that's the thing about traditional music, you need to make sense of it, right? When you're playing bebop, you can't play anything. You have to make sense of that. And not that it's easy. By no means is it easy. But you have to know what you're doing and how to do it. The good thing about this new music, it allows us as musicians and composers and arrangers to kind of like just put our thoughts on paper and they make sense for themselves.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of why I write in this new style. Music aside, a lot of the music I'm doing now, and Jordan, I think we've talked about this before, obviously, and we still need to talk about it. But we need to talk again. Oh yeah,
yeah.
But a lot of this music is speaking to things that are happening right now, and I feel like a broken record because I'm pretty sure I said this to you in front of the screen some time ago, but that's okay. I'm going to say it again. I just believe this music must speak to the issues of its people. This music comes out of African American tradition. It comes from African Americans. It comes from Black people, and it's a disservice to the music when you walk around and say I can play jazz and won't address the issues that goes along with it, and the people that are affected by the things that are happening in America. And so a lot of the music that I write is going to speak not just on issues. I'm just going to say I want to talk about the issues. No, I'm talking about Black Lives Matter. I'm talking about Black women being killed by police. I'm not sugarcoating it. I'm not saying, let's talk about social justice. Yeah, that's cool. Let's get a little more specific.
That's almost become a euphemism.
Right. Everybody can talk about social justice. Let me hear you talk about Black Lives Matter.
That's right.
Let's talk about it. And so I want my music to speak on that. And one of the most recent tunes I wrote speaks about how Black women are being killed at the hands of police, and they're not even being talked about. I mean, it's so nice to talk about the Black men, but the Black men aren't the only people existing, and they're not the only people being killed by police. And cisgendered people are not the only people getting killed by police.
That's right.
And so I'm speaking about it all. And if it's injustice, it's injustice. I don't have a bias on injustice. And so I want my music to speak to all those things.
Yeah, and I think, it's so important because if you look throughout the tradition of the music, that's what they're doing. And frankly, you know what? If John Coltrane knew that there were people running around saying, oh, I love jazz, I play jazz, but, turning around and saying something like, oh, Blue Lives Matter, whatever, like something that's just like absolutely flying in the face of the music and the reason that the music exists. I think he would like come back up, from the grave and say, what are you all doing? And, and haunt some people in a train matrix.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's the other thing too. I love my students very dearly. I'm really sick of people just boiling down John Coltrane's contributions to a 16-bar song form.
Oh,
I'm really tired of
yeah,
that. I'm really like, it's just, oh, John Coltrane, Giant Steps, cool. That represented the like his artistry, the pinnacle of his artistry, for like a week, and
exactly,
then he got better. You know, so
exactly.
I mean, I'm kind of over that. But anyway, I just think that if our musical forefathers and foremothers, for that matter, Mary Lou, you know, if Mary Lou knew, I just think that she would like have a conniption.
As they should. I'm gonna have one, and I'm not even coming out of that long ago. I mean, yeah, John Coltrane, Giant Steps, 26-2, Countdown, cool. Let's talk about Alabama.
That's
Let's
right.
talk about the things that really, I mean, the things that he was really speaking about was heavy things, and everybody wasn't doing it back then. And even back then, jazz was in the majority of the hands of black people. I mean, there wasn't that many white jazz musicians, and John Coltrane was still one of the few people speaking about these things on the big stage, at least in jazz. I mean, we all know what happened in Alabama. Exactly, Kev.
Strange Fruit,
Oh
Big Holiday.
my God, Kevin Jones. Yes, Strange Fruit. Like, let's
We Insist, Max Roach and Abby Lincoln.
thank you. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Mingus.
Mingus, that's right. Fables.
Yeah,
Basically everything that Mingus wrote. Let's be real.
right. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's the youth in me, but I'm a little sick of music being played by people who aren't willing to speak on the truth. This music is truth. I mean, this is our truth. And it needs to be spoken, and I think it's time for more jazz musicians to speak up, not just in words and in their music.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, like the It's Time by Max Roach. Yeah, Kev. Yeah. It's and it is time, not to like turn a phrase using a title like everybody, but it is time. Like
Yeah,
and I personally, part of the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing right now, part of the reason that I am, in academia teaching, is because my teachers taught this to me. And so I said, you know what? Too many of y'all jazz studies programs aren't really acknowledging that jazz is black music. That is a travesty.
It is.
And so I said, like, all right, I'm going to go through, I'm going to do the thing. And sure enough, every day in my classes, jazz is black music. Let's put on a Messenger's record and let's see what's up.
Yeah. I mean, you have to. I mean,
you have to, but so many people aren't.
So many people aren't.
So many people just don't.
And I hate to be mean about it, but if you listen to their playing, you can also tell that they aren't. Because in order to play this music with the heart that it was intended to be played with, you got to know the history.
Absolutely.
You can totally tell somebody who can play a bunch of notes and understand harmony, but don't understand the culture.
Yeah. You really can. And I just think that, when they do that, I believe that, the music was given graciously to this world for such a time as this.
Oh yeah.
And it speaks to current circumstances just like it did. And if you listen to, like, I don't know, The Prisoner, right? It sounds just as fresh, just as poignant, just as like visceral as it did when it came out.
Right.
Yeah, well, see, Archie Shepp was his professor in college. Now that's hip.
Well, we also got to understand Kevin comes out the tradition for real.
Oh yeah, like absolutely.
There's not many people around like Kevin Jones. I mean, he comes out the tradition. He understands the tradition. He knows the tradition.
Just because he lived it. He lived around the block from St. Rivers.
He lived it, and he's willing to speak on it. And that's one thing that I'm always going to love about Kevin. He's willing to speak the truth about this.
That's right. And he's not shy about it, which is the thing. Like,
oh, no.
In West Michigan, so many people are like, They're like, oh, I don't want to offend anybody, and it's like, no, no,
Right. Yeah.
that's not hip. Like, um, we did have a question come in. I don't want to ignore this person because the comments are kind of they're coming along, but
Yeah.
Jake says that's a great point. Can you speak more to how this is not just an issue now, but it has been in jazz history? I think he was talking about some of this BLM stuff that we were talking about before. I can't exactly remember.
Um. Yeah. I mean, I guess if that's what he's speaking of, or just about
I
things.
think
I
maybe about
mean,
the tradition and not addressing the issues. I don't know, Jake. You're
oh,
probably out there. You're going to have to kind of
yeah. Can you
refresh us a little
clarify?
bit. I didn't want to ignore your comment, but now I've forgotten the context in which your comment existed. So sorry about that, Jake. Um, so yeah. Oh, here's Kevin just repping.
My
Kevin's
grandmother played
grandmother
with
played with
Bessie
Bessie
Smith.
Smith. So if you didn't,
Ah,
first of all, if you didn't know that, you know, and we were apparently one step ahead of Jake. We answered his question already, so
okay.
our bad, I guess. Hey, if you all have any other questions for our guest, you can definitely go ahead and drop those in the comments. He'll be happy
Drop
to
them below,
answer
guys.
them, or I'll make sure that he's happy. No, I'm just kidding. um, but
I'm always
look,
happy.
look at this. Kevin just my grandmother played with Bessie Smith. Okay, so first of all, like if you don't, I mean, I know more of my students need to go and check out Bessie Smith, but like if we have some listeners who maybe aren't hip to Bessie Smith, that I mean that's kind of like a travesty, um,
Right.
but Bessie Smith, yeah, Kevin's grandmother played with Bessie Smith. He's around it. He's in the tradition. Um, so
Actually, you know what? Can I speak to that real quick, Jordan?
yeah,
Um, so I'm glad Kevin brought that up because there is, and again, I feel like a broken record because I know I said this to you before in front of my screen, but there is a lineage to this music that has to be addressed. And again, I'm not trying to be like a jazz elitist or anything because that's not me. I mean, obviously, I'm one of the homeboys. I got a hat on, guys. But don't walk up on a stage and can play every non-functional harmony tune that you can find in the most odd meters. And when I call a blues at 60 BPM, you struggle. Learn the blues. There's a lineage, guys. I
mm-hmm.
mean, there's field songs, there's the hymns of the church, there's blues, there's gospel. All these things are precursors to jazz. And if you really want to understand the language of jazz, you have to get some gospel in your body. You got to get some
Mm-hmm.
blues in your
Yeah.
soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Oh, yes, I certainly do. Well, Nadia has a question here. She says, "How do we keep this tradition alive with our maybe young people, with our young people and steeped in the culture it grew out of?"
Um, I think two things. I think it would have been easier to keep it alive had we kept the music where it belonged. One of the biggest mistakes that we made is we put music in schools. Uh, it was a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I've benefited from teaching in schools. Jordan, you have too. Kevin does too. But there was the way the music was originally taught, and in my opinion, the intentions of the music to be taught was to be on the streets, in the clubs, with mentors, in homes. And so that's the way this tradition should have been passed down. It was taken, it was stolen, like a lot of other things, and it was put into academia. With that, the history and the culture was removed from that. Now, fortunately, we have. Did I just get? Okay, I'm back. Now there's more people and representation of color in schools, in terms of faculty and teachers and professors. So now it's our jobs to make sure that is being taught there. Uh, Unfortunately, it probably was not as much taught to us. My school had an all-white cast of professors, so they weren't interested in teaching the culture. Well, maybe they were interested. Either way, it wasn't taught. And so it's now our jobs who has this music, black, white. It doesn't really matter what you are. It's the responsibility of the musicians at this point to pass down that culture. And if you don't know the culture, then you need to go back to school. And I don't mean the building. You need to
Yeah,
hit the
that's
clubs.
right.
You need to hit the mentors. You need to hit
Yeah,
the
yeah.
OGs of this music and learn
Hmm.
it so that it can be passed down. Or the music is going to start to lose. Um, it's going to start to lose the spirit in which it was created.
Yeah. Well, and just hear me. I do not take any offense to you saying that like music was stolen and put into academia, because I believe that happened. I believe that was happening throughout the entire existence of the music. You
Oh yeah,
know, ODJB. You know,
yeah,
ODJB. And you're talking about these swing bands making dimes off the backs of black musicians, while the
right,
black musicians have to go out and conduct expensive tours, and they starve. Frank Sinatra having this publicist,
right,
and Mary Lou Williams never being on par, if not
yeah,
eclipsing his talent, but never being represented because she didn't have the money to hire a
right.
publicist. It goes on, and I really do think that, like, for me at least, when I saw the urgency of my own, and again, here I go again off ranting, when this is your thing, but
No, no, talk.
what
I'm here for it.
when I saw when I saw that happening, and it really happened when I was over in Ann Arbor, in Ann Arbor, Detroit area. Not that I'm saying that those are the same thing, because they're not. But when I was over there and learning from, my incredible mentors, and I realized what had happened in the academic, something snapped in me,
Hmm.
and I was like, wait a minute, this is not right. I was never. How did I go 4 years and I was never taught this once?
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
you realize, oh, well, if there are people out there, and I would say the vast majority of them out there, who are teaching with no context, who are not teaching, you know, to love black people, like you capitalize on black culture,
right,
like if there are people out there, then at least I need to do what I can to not only be in a place where I'm telling people about that, but then to also invite in the voices of people
right,
who are those OGs,
right.
Yeah, and so to me, I don't, like I said, I don't take any offense to what you said, because it's precisely because of that I'm doing what
Right.
I'm doing right now. It's
Oh yeah.
precisely because of that I see this kind of cultural crisis. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you mentioned it, because there are too
Yeah.
many all white faculties out there who are just not. And you know what? It doesn't matter that they're white is not the problem. That they do
Exactly.
not teach the lineage. That's the problem. That they
That's the problem.
refuse to acknowledge the heritage of the music. That's the
Right.
problem.
There's so many great white jazz musicians who understand where this comes from. Like you said,
Absolutely.
being white isn't the issue. The problem is whitewashing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. So Kevin actually, I just have to share this. We want that spirit all up in, and I mean it just like that. GR Noir. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
We want that spirit. I'm here for that, let me tell you.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And Kevin says it was passed down to him through grandparents, uncles, neighbors, etc. Yeah, it's the culture. It's the
Yeah.
culture of the music, and you separate the music from the culture. It loses its transformative power. You
Yeah.
know, People wonder why you can fall asleep. For the fifth time, 500th time that somebody is singing, like, oh, I don't know, like Ain't Misbehaving, but like it's like, you know what I mean? Like when
Right.
somebody's like, not doing it, real justice, and people wonder, but it's like, yeah, when you strip the music of its authenticity and its power, then it's like then of course it's not. Then of course it's not cool. It's like diet jazz.
Yeah, it's I never thought about that, but you're completely right. I mean, I've been to plenty of jazz concerts, when I was at Western. And again, I'm not knocking anybody who they brought in or anything like that, but I've been to a lot of them, and they were cool. But there were definitely some times where I got sleepy, But there has never been a time where I've went to see Wynton. I mean, I've never been a time where I saw Bob or Rodney or, yeah, I mean, it, I was alive when Joe Henderson still. Well, I guess I'm still alive. I was around when Joe Henderson was. I'm hopefully still alive. This is like the sixth sense, and you're like actually not seeing me. But I've been to those concerts, and I'm like, wow, like I mean, I remember going to see Mulgrew, who was like my biggest influence, and I'm like,
Oh yeah,
the whole time, and
right.
I've seen some other great pianists who like they're great, but after 30 minutes, I'm like, oh man, that's a killing line. Oh no,
Yeah.
another great killing line, But I don't feel anything. I hear some good stuff. I'm not feeling anything.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that the first time I ever heard Jerry Allen play,
Ah,
the first time I ever heard her play, man, I do not like. I was mentally on the edge of my seat the whole time
yeah,
because it was captivating. And then she brought
yeah,
Marcus on stage, and it was like, I mean, I've never been so like, well, that's not true because every other time I heard her play, I was like this. But I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is the stuff. Like and of course, like when you hear her speak about her music and hear her talk about how like how much love is in her heart.
right.
It's just like it's infectious. Um, And it is sacred, Kevin. Absolutely. It is street gospel.
Oh yeah, that's it. Street gospel.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of things you can say on the street that you cannot say in the church, so that's why I call it street gospel.
Oh,
In
no.
jazz, we'll say some stuff in jazz that you better not take that into the church.
Oh, that's right.
Both in language and music.
So Nadia and Shaitan say this is precisely why I had to go to New Orleans to appreciate and fall in love with jazz. I get that. Jake saying he's down to go to New Orleans. Jake highly recommended. I was there recently. It's a beautiful town. It's one big nonstop party, and you can see where the culture of the music just blossomed in that city. It was the perfect place.
That's when you step into New Orleans, you just feel something about those grounds. I mean, not even like where the jazz clubs are necessarily, but just like something about the grounds of New Orleans. Maybe it's just for jazz musicians, but it speaks something to us because that is literally our founding place. Our founding father was there. Yes, Congo Square, and
Yeah.
granted, I don't recommend going on Bourbon Street. I'm just gonna be honest with you, not for jazz. But me and my wife, we walked down Bourbon Street because we were on vacation. That's what we're gonna do. Like I wasn't there. But I listen, I'm walking down and I'm like, wow, somebody is really killing. Like they are playing the heck out of the tradition. And I walk in and it's like one of my oldest friends. We met when I was 13 and he's playing. I'm like, that's why it's a tradition.
That's right.
But that's how it is in New Orleans. You walk on the street and you just hear cats like talking and expressing themselves on their instruments.
Mm-hmm.
It's like heaven on earth for jazz musicians.
It really is. And I just think like, yeah, you walk around there and you're like, yeah, this is sacred ground.
Oh yeah.
This is where, I mean, this is where the music was when you're at like the landmark, if you will, landmark Congo Square. Like when you're there, it's like, yeah. I mean, it hits you.
Oh yeah. It's a spiritual connection there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's where we all, if you're in tune with the music and its culture, that's where we come from. And again, this isn't, black, white, it don't matter. I don't, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. If you're in tune with the music and its culture, that's where we come from.
Well, and it didn't matter to like so many great musicians. That's another thing that Jerry used to always say. she would say that she was always worried, and I don't know why she would have any reason to be worried about this, but she was always worried about being a woman. Well, let me rephrase that. Women in jazz is definitely like a significant issue that we all need to face. But
Yeah.
but with her talent, like I don't
Mm-hmm.
know why she would ever be worried. Anyway, she used to always say, I felt like I was worried because I was worried people weren't going to accept me if because I was a woman and I've worked really hard to to perfect this craft,
Mm-hmm.
and to play this music and do it justice and I think honestly, with it, but then she said, yeah, I mean, I was embraced. I was readily embraced. People embraced my music when they heard me play, because that's what the music does.
Oh yeah.
Because if you've done
Oh
your
yeah.
homework and you've respected the tradition, if you've been checking people out, if you've been, living in that place of mentorship from
Right.
the older generations, they respect that and they know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you. One thing that you said is interesting, and I definitely want to speak to is the mentorship aspect. Um, even as a grown man pianist, there's one person who, whenever I play, he will pull me to the side and say, don't do that again. I want you to try it this way. I want you. We'll play together at a gig, and he'll still pull me aside. He'll call me for the gig, and still do this. And so I think it's important for us to really understand that in this music, um, it's passed down through mentorship. You must have someone who understands the language, who understands the music. And when I say mentorship, professors are different. I know a lot of people are like, I have a professor that I talk to. Or something like, you need a street mentor. You
Yes.
need somebody who understands, the music outside of academia.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that's not where the music comes from.
Right,
And
exactly.
if people only understand the music from a standpoint of academia, that's not, that's like 5%. Let's be real.
No,
That's like
right,
5% of the story, and the other 95% is literally everything else. That's the street. That's the
right,
the black church. That's mentorship of that nature.
exactly.
Um, and it's just not something that you can throw away.
Right.
And
Exactly.
again, professors are different. Professors are different. Like,
Right.
and having a professor that you talk to like every once in a while, that's not. I mean,
That's
that's
not
different.
right.
That's
Yeah.
different than mentorship in this music.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So here's Kevin. He says we have to create spaces here in GR for the music to thrive. That is why I'm working with Nadia and Shaitan at GR Noir. We have to find a space for us for the music to grow. And well, Kevin here, he says jazz music is sacred music, period.
Period.
Now we got Martine up in here saying that growing up in our household, jazz was the soundtrack for our lives every day.
Every day. Yeah, you have to ingest this music literally every day. I
Yeah.
mean, uh, this it has to be like your musical Bible. Like this is what you wake up, you listen to this. You go to sleep, you listen to this. During the day, you're transcribing this.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're supposed to be sleeping, you're up practicing. Right? You don't sleep with this music. Like you have to. This isn't just something. This isn't pop music. This isn't R&B. Like it takes time to learn this music. Culture aside, just the music itself is hard. Yeah, it takes time to learn the music. But yeah, I'm glad Kevin said what he said. I'm not from GR, and I have not broken into the GR scene. I know a few people up there. I know quite a few people actually. But from what I hear, and anybody knows me knows I'm honest, the scene is pretty whitewashed. there's not many people like me playing jazz in GR. There's a few, there's a few up there. But again, it's the same thing as academia. If you're not representing everyone, just stop playing the music.
That's right. That's right. Well, and that's why we wanted to work, double time to have you here on the program a couple different times, because we want musicians like you up here. We want to make the scene more spiritual and more sacred. We want people like you up here who believe that the music is sacred, live it in their everyday lives. We want that, or at least those of us like, Kevin and myself joined the board of the Jazz Society because we saw this, and we saw this kind of happening to the scene. And you know what? The board president, I have to give Michelle a shout out because she is working with Kevin and I to produce some very exciting events. But we want it to be more diverse. We want great musicians like yourselves. That's why I wanted you to do the hiring for the band for this gig on Friday. Yeah. It's because I wanted something straight out of church, and I'm pretty sure you're going to deliver.
Yeah. I mean, the street gospel, as Kevin calls it. I mean, the guys that I got coming with me, and don't get me wrong, I play with some great guys all the time. But I knew for this, I knew what you guys are going for in the work that you and Kevin and whoever else is on this board are doing. And so, first, kudos to you guys, because again, jazz needs it. And not just GR jazz, West Michigan jazz needs it. I mean, and I understand you guys are the West Michigan Jazz Society. But you guys can go ahead and expand down to Kalamazoo if you want, because we could use all of what you're doing up there down here. But the cats I'm bringing in are straight out of Detroit. They come out of the tradition. I mean, they come from. I mean, the bass player is literally one of Rodney's former students. I mean,
beautiful.
I mean, the drummer too. He comes from Uncle G. If anybody knows, the MSU, Uncle G is like a legend. And he comes from the studio of Uncle G. So I got some swinging cats, and they understand the tradition and they understand the music and the difference. Also.
And why don't you tell us about you don't have to say like the bass player, the drummer. You can tell us by name about your musicians that you'll be bringing along for your trio. Why don't you introduce them to kind of our audience here?
Yeah. So the bass player I have is Brandon Rose. And when I tell you, I'm bringing him here, and he will probably be the most swinging bass player on this side of the state for that full hour.
He's him. I mean, he's like real.
He's real. He comes out of Detroit. I mean, we both come out of Detroit, but he comes out of Detroit.
No, I know what you're saying.
Studied with Rodney. I mean, he's the real deal. And then of course the drummer is like, he's becoming a legend in his right, but especially in Michigan. I mean, he's getting calls from everybody. Michael Reed. I mean, he's like one of the most musical, swinging drummers you will ever hear. And it's honestly my pleasure to be able to even call them and ask them to come, play with me. So I'm excited.
Oh, we're excited too. This is going to be great. So we have this Black History Month thing that we're doing. Really, really proud of that because, there have been some really, really incredible Black musicians who have been recognized by WMJS. And if I start listing people, I'm gonna leave somebody out, but I'm gonna try anyway. The great Mel Dalton, Edie Evans Hyde.
She can sing. You hear me?
She can. I hear you. I hear you.
That's one of my favorite all-time vocalists to play with worldwide. I mean, that lady understands jazz. Keep going. I just want to throw that in.
Oh, no. I got you. I'm here for that. Elgin Vines, all of these incredible musicians who have been Jimmy Forrest.
Oh,
the great Jimmy Forrest. I mean, I'm a saxophone player. He should have been the first. Kurt Purnell. I'm a saxophone player. Jimmy Forrest should have been the first person I thought of.
Right. Come on. You're doing a disservice to your own instrument, man. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
Talk about vocalists.
As someone from Kalamazoo, what could we do to help expand to really be the West Michigan Jazz Society, not just GR? So he's asking for your perspective as somebody who lives in Kalamazoo.
I would say for anybody who's interested, I don't want to be the spokesperson here, but contact me. Let me know, and I will talk to Kevin and Jordan personally. I mean, it's pretty easy considering I'm friends with both of them. So I would say we need to connect with Kevin, we need to connect with Jordan, and we need to connect with the West Michigan Jazz Society, and get them to kind of include us in this, because I think we want to be in this. I think we need to be in this, not for you guys, for us. This city needs to be included in that. There's a lot of jazz going here, but there's not a lot of tradition. There's not a lot of understanding of the tradition and the history. And from the work that you guys are doing, we definitely need you all. We're begging you to expand that here.
Oh, we're here for it. We're here for it. I think there is a little saying that goes like, take care of put your own house in order before you, start like. So I think right now we're pretty focused on just putting our own house in order. But I do believe that like West Michigan Jazz Society has to be West Michigan.
Yeah.
And to me at least, but I when you say that the scene here is whitewashed in Grand Rapids, I mean, you keep saying about how you're direct and you're blunt and whatever, and but it's real. It's the truth.
Yeah.
And somehow we in music and in life have gone to a point where we don't prefer being real. We don't prefer things that are real. We'll take the imitation cheese. And
Right.
we'll take the real imitation cheese, and we'll take the metaphorical imitation cheese. And I just think that there need to be more people out there like you who will speak truth and say like, no, this is not it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And a lot of the guys that I studied under, again, like people like, Roger Jones, and even when I, get the fortunate chance to play with some of the Michigan staples like Ali and Bob, they talk about it. They're not holding anything back. They give me a lot of courage to speak to the things that I feel, because when I get with them, they talk about what's wrong with this music. They do these things. And I think it's important. It has to happen. If we care about this music, we have to reform what's been happening, or we need to have a rebirth. Because who the music is now is not who it was intended to be.
No. Well, and Martin, this is case in point. Martin says back in the day, it was totally different. Lots of clubs, many black-owned. The musicians were very diverse. Right there. It's right there. Yeah. And somehow we've lost that.
Oh, we have.
We've lost that, and to me, it has failed to be a priority. Because if you care about something, it's going to happen.
Right.
But if things like this are not a priority to you,
it's easy to push it down the road.
It really is. It really is. So we're kind of closing up on our final minutes here. I don't know. It doesn't feel like I've been talking to you for 60 minutes. It feels like it's been 60 seconds. Jeez, Rufus. I want to take another minute and just thank the West Michigan Jazz Society for producing this series. Thank you, Kevin Jones, for having the vision to promote a series of jazz talks as something that we can do even in this time of the COVID pandemic. I want to remind you that these talks are provided free of charge by the West Michigan Jazz Society, and if you're able, donate to our mission, because your money for our mission goes to support great artists like Rufus and great music from artists like Rufus and Michael and Brandon, who you will see in just a few days.
Just a few days.
Now we have Black History Month will feature panels, history of black musicians in Grand Rapids, black women in jazz, the young players who came out of Grand Rapids who are currently working. Absolutely, this is our kind of our thing, and I just can't wait for it. I think it's going to be really incredible. I want to kind of talk about what irons you have in the fire, because somebody like you You know, you've always got something going. So what's new? What's kind of on the horizon for Rufus? First of all, where can people check you out? Where can people check out your music? How can they support you? And then how do we just like what do you have on the horizon?
So I would say, well, the closest thing I have is in a couple weeks we have a Miles Davis tribute in Detroit, featuring some of the greatest players out of Detroit. Brandon Rose and Michael Reed will also be on that gig, and I'm fortunate enough to be playing piano. Unfortunately, that show is sold out, so I don't think anybody can go. But that is the most recent thing I have coming up. Um, on Sunday, if anybody is interested in classical music or jazz, I have been commissioned by the Kalamazoo Symphony Orchestra to write a piece, a Christmas carol, or Christmas hymn, if you will, for orchestra and jazz piano. So they will be premiering that on Sunday. And so you will hear my orchestral writing, and I also did play on that. So you'll get to hear me play. And it will be live streamed on their page Sunday at 4.
Oh, that's hip. I'll check that out for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and where else can people support you? Like what are some like where can they find your music? Where can they check you out?
So a lot of people have always asked, when you're going to record an album? When are you going to record an album? I've never recorded an album. I've recorded on lots of albums, but I've never done my own music. And not for a long time, but a big part of that is because I really enjoy the community that comes with this music. I love being called by people. I love playing with people, meeting different people. And so I've never really took the time to sit down and like, I'm going to record my own album. So if you want to hear me play, I mean, go to YouTube. I'm all over that. But hopefully one day I'll get an album going. I mean, Jordan, maybe me and you could do an album.
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Let's do that.
Hey, you know what? I love duo. Let's just do it, the two of us, man.
I'm all down.
Let's hit
I
that.
love duo.
So Martine says, Rufus, will that be a virtual show in the D?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I will check it out and I will let Jordan know.
Sounds good, man. Well, once again, I'd like to thank our incredible guest, Rufus Ferguson. One place that you can check Rufus out is Friday at the WMJS virtual holiday party. That'll be streamed live from Blue Lake Public Radio. Steve Albert's going to be at the board. He's great. With Brandon Rose on the bass and Michael Reed on the drums. They're going to be coming at you. I was about to say just like the Oscar Peterson trio, but I was gonna, maybe in the spirit. I'll just say in the spirit. Yeah. In the spirit of the Oscar Peterson trio. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great one.